Successful meetings and ultimately successful collaborations are about people, first and foremost. When you can't have everybody in the same room with you, it's important to be able to see them, to be able to interact with them, along with the information that you're working on. The only way that we could make it happen every day is to use GoToMeeting.
I'm Michael Parrish-Dudell, entrepreneur, speaker, and best-selling author of Shark Tank Jumpstart Your Business. This is a show about discovery, about showcasing the next generation of business and media influencers. It's new, it's now, it's the next crop. Hi everyone, welcome to The Next Crop. I'm Michael Parrish-Dudell. My guest today is Pittampalli, a speaker and best-selling author whose new book is all about the power of persuasion, but it's probably a little different than you think. Al, thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be here, Mike.
So I just gave a teaser. I said the book is a little different than other books out there about persuasion. Tell me why your book is different than those other books I'm going to find on the bookshelf.
Well, so there's a million books on how to be more persuasive, right? In fact, if you go to Barnes & Noble, you'll see a ton of them. I mean, how to win friends and influence people, to sell as human. My favorite is this book that's called How to Persuade People Who Don't Want to Be Persuaded.
Now that book sounds wonderful. I want to buy that book and read it immediately.
But my point is that I think we're a little bit obsessed with being persuasive.
Yeah.
And as a culture, we're actually fairly persuasive already. What we're really bad at, as it turns out, is being persuadable, in the sense that no one really has a genuine willingness to change their mind, right? So if we're in an argument, I'm trying to persuade you, you're trying to persuade me, but neither one of us is trying to actually be persuaded. Because in our culture, to be persuaded is perceived as a weakness.
Sure.
The goal of this book is to turn it into a strength. Because I think not only is being persuadable the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do.
So your book is built around the idea that we all need to be a little bit more persuadable, and this is the book that I'm going to read that's going to teach me not only how to be open to that, but actually how to be persuaded.
Exactly. I mean, basically, part of the book is an argument. It's trying to argue the reason why people aren't persuadable is because I argue that they don't see the virtue in it. Right? They don't understand, everybody understands how the benefits of being persuasive, but no one's really articulated the benefits of being persuadable.
All right, I'm going to stop you. I don't actually understand the virtues of being, full disclosure, Al, you and I have known each other for many years. I am not very good at being persuaded. Am I missing out on something? Is it really good to be persuadable? Am I losing something that I should have?
Yes.
And what is that? What is that?
So first let's define persuadable, because persuadable doesn't mean you're always persuaded, right? Persuadable does not mean gullible.
You've persuaded me that it doesn't mean that. Good. First success.
Persuadable is the genuine willingness to change your mind in the face of good evidence, right? So you could be totally persuadable and still be not persuaded, right? If I'll give you a chance to convince me of something, yet if you don't provide me the right evidence or the right data, then I'll just say, you know what, I'm not convinced. But persuadable is a good faith effort to be persuaded in the face of good evidence, right? So the reason why this is so important is especially in a world that is changing faster than ever, right? I mean, obviously look at business, right? The marketplace is changing faster than ever. Technology is accelerating at a rapid pace. In order to adapt to a changing environment, you have to be able to change with it, right? And in order for you to change, the first thing that has to happen is you have to change your mind about something, right? So this is why it's so incredibly important to be persuadable, because it's the key to agility in business and in life.
So is the secret to being persuadable humility?
That is
one
that
of the
at the
very core of it? Because that's what it sounds like. It's
absolutely.
To take a step back. You need to be humble. And you need to be able to say, you know what, the first time I did this, the first time I thought about it, wasn't the right way. Now I have to change.
Absolutely. At a certain level, you have to understand that whatever you think you know, you may be wrong, right? No matter what belief you have in your mind, as certain as you think you are, there exists a possibility that you may be wrong. Now, that doesn't mean you should be falsely humble, right? I mean, we're not going to sit here and dispute that gravity exists, but there may be a 0.0001% chance that maybe we have gotten something wrong about the existence of gravity. So just that little bit of humility is important in order to be persuadable.
Now, you've tried to be persuadable in many ways on stage as a speaker, as a consultant to companies, as an author. Persuasion is something that's very close to your heart. Right. One thing that your very last book, which was called Read This Before Your Next Meeting, was trying to persuade corporate America that they were doing meetings wrong. And I agree with you. I think that the meeting culture is completely broken. Talk to me a little bit about that experience and why you chose meetings as a topic to discuss.
It's a great question, Mike, because when I look at meetings, you realize that they're kind of the lifeblood of an organization, yeah. Right? I mean, meetings are at the heart of how organizations make decisions, collaborate, communicate on the most important issues of the day. So very early on, I identified this as kind of one of the keystone things when it comes to changing culture, right? I mean, in any organization, there's so many things you can do to try to change the culture in an organization, but they're kind of intangible, right? Meetings are a great place to start because they're a tangible thing. You can actually change the way things happen in meetings, and if you do, then it has the opportunity to actually change the entire organization.
Now, you just talked about decision making, which is something that you've talked a lot about to organizations. Tell me a little bit about decision making, the process behind decision making in 2014. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And how does your book and your theory play into that?
It's a great question. I mean, I think the key for understanding why decisions fail so often in organizations is understanding this thing called the diffusion of responsibility, right? It turns out when groups are really good at a lot of things, but they're really bad at making decisions and taking action when you put them inside of a room and there is confusion, right? Okay. Because when there is confusion and there's no leadership, there's no kind of direction, then people just look to everybody else and they see that you're not doing anything, so I'm not doing anything, and nobody ends up doing anything, right? I mean, we all know the classic story of there's like 50 people on a street corner watching a building burning, and nobody picks up the phone and calls the fire department, yeah. Right? And that's the bystander effect, the diffusion of responsibility in action. So I think the number one thing when we think about decision making is leadership, right? Whenever a group of people come together to decide on something, which is, by the way, a really valuable thing to do. Sure. We understand from the research that groups really do make great decisions. There has to be a leader, somebody who's an owner, somebody who's accountable for making sure the decision is made. That doesn't mean he has to do it as a dictator, do it kind of as an autocratic decision-making thing. He just has to be there to make sure that there is a process in place for understanding how this decision is going to get made.
And it helps if that person is easily persuadable, right? See how we tied it back? It was just right around the corner. It was just a walk around the block.
Couldn't have done it better myself.
All right, so you're an author who's published books with the Domino Project, which was a company started by Seth Godin and powered by Amazon, and then now with a traditional publisher, HarperCollins. Let's talk about the process. How has working with a traditional publisher been different than working with one of these hybrid models we've seen?
It's very interesting. I mean, I'm in the process of working with the traditional publisher, so I'm still testing it out. They both have their advantages and disadvantages, yeah. Right? I mean, Seth Godin's Domino Project was this innovative, brilliant kind of formula where we utilized the power of the web to spread ideas in a way that had never been done before. Sure. I mean, my book, actually, we made it available for free for the first 7 days, and we got a corporate sponsor to subsidize that, to make it worth our while, and the book spread all over the world. And we got so many people to read the book for free in the first 7 days that it led to an incredible amount of sales after that, sure. Right? So we were able to experiment, we were able to take risks, we were able to utilize the power of the internet. The reason why I'm going the traditional route right now is because I really want to understand the power of the offline world, yeah. Right? I mean, having a publisher that's going to get my book into Barnes & Noble is a really valuable thing. Yeah. And I've never been able to experience that in a powerful way. So I want to be able to now try that model and then the old model and compare and see, what are the advantages and disadvantages of both.
There are a lot of people who are watching who are content creators themselves, whether they're writers or bloggers or authors. Maybe they want to get published. Let's talk about what it means today to be a business author and how does somebody who has an idea actually turn that idea into a book?
I think there's a lot of ways I can answer that question, but I think the first one is fundamentally understanding what writing is, because I think that people have it wrong.
So what is it?
I think writing is an instrument to communicate ideas, but it's also a thinking tool. So what everybody thinks is that, when you have a great idea for a book, that's when you write. You know, you write the idea, and the book is the kind of the formulation of the idea. But it turns out that writing actually produces ideas better than anything else. So most people wait way too long. They're waiting for the idea to come, and then they write, instead of realizing that sometimes you need to write for 6 months before you actually have the insight that is good enough to actually write a book.
Yeah.
Most people start out with a topic. They say, oh, I'm going to write a book on sports, so I'm going to write a book on persuasion. But that's not a book. A book needs a thesis. It needs an insight that is a fresh look on the world that nobody's ever said before. And so whether it be in business, whether it be in arts, whether it be in anything, you have to write ruthlessly over a period of time on that topic before you get that nugget of wisdom that allows you to be able to convince a publisher that I have something new that's going to change the world.
And let's talk about convincing a publisher, because let's say I've done that. Let's say I've done the pre-work, have a great idea, I've put the time and the energy in, I just want to get published. Right. Let's talk logistics. How do I go about that? Do I need an agent? Should I go by myself? Like, what's the process?
From what I understand, most publishers work through agents, right? So the answer is not how do I get a publisher, it's how do I get a good agent. And there's probably two ways to do that. One is to already have an audience, to have a following. You know, if you're famous, if you're Hillary Clinton or if you're Bill O'Reilly, you're going to have no problem getting a publisher,
sure.
Right? But even some people who are, bloggers and who have built a following just through writing, they have this humongous advantage because people already know who they are. Publishers are going to be very interested in talking to you. The second way to get a publisher is to have a really great idea. And again, to my first point, most people think they have a really great idea, but they probably don't. And that's because they haven't really come up with something that is fundamentally different than what's already been said out there. So the most powerful way to get a publisher is to have both, right? Yeah. To have some following and to have a really great idea. And that's, if you have both of those things, you really maximize the chances of getting a publisher.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. I want to know about one piece of advice that you've gotten over the years. It could be life or career, but probably career, since this kind of show is about, that has impacted you in such a way that has made you persuadable, that has changed the way you've done something in a drastic way. What's that piece of advice?
This is actually probably comes from Seth Godin, who I know is a mentor of both of ours. Yeah. And he convinced, I'll never forget this, he was giving a talk, and he doesn't even know that I heard him talk about.
Well, I'm going to send this video to him, so he's going to know now.
But he was giving a talk about to a nonprofit audience, change makers, people that were doing amazing work in the world. And he made this point that it's so obvious, but it's so kind of controversial when you hear it, which is that if you're a nonprofit and you're doing amazing work and you're achieving a mission, and another nonprofit is competing with you and they're doing the same kind of work, they're not really competing with you. And in fact, if they're doing something better than you, you need to either copy what they're doing or you need to start giving them money, right? Because at the end of the day, we are here to solve problems. We are here to do great work. And this idea of understanding that there's a lot of people out there who have great ideas and great ways to solve problems, and we need to be open-minded to understanding that maybe ours isn't the best solution. And if it isn't, then we need to stop what we're doing and either pick a different trade, pick a different business, or start getting behind the leader, the one who really knows how to solve the problem.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. My guest today has been Al Pittampalli. You can find out more about what Al's working on his site, modernmeetingstandard.com. Of course, you can also find him on Twitter, @Pittampalli. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget you can visit thenextcrop.com/more for 5 more minutes of this episode. You're only going to find it there, totally free. We're going to be talking about how you can become more persuadable if Al has persuaded you in such a way. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week.